Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the most chaotic, coked-up, neon-soaked corner of history, the world of 1980s Wall Street cocaine traders. That's right, strap in, because we're about to relive the yuppie dream, where ambition was unlimited, the hair was full of secrets, and diversifying your portfolio meant keeping at least 3 different brands of nose candy in your desk drawer. Before you pop open your Perrier, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Comment below with where you're listening from, what decade you survived, and how much Aquanet you used back in the day. No judgment. Now dim those lights, crank up that white noise machine, or just imagine the sound of 400 typewriters and a screaming Gordon Gekko, and get comfortable. Maybe snuggle under your favourite shoulder-padded robe, because things are about to get intense. But let me ask you, have you ever wondered what it felt like to have a $10,000 Rolex but no idea what sleep is? How do you survive a work week powered solely by adrenaline, nicotine, and drugs that make your teeth feel like maracas? Would you last a single day on the trading floor, or would you get eaten alive by a guy named Chad in suspenders? Is it true that if you spilled a little powdered sugar on your suit, nobody even asked if it was for coffee? Did people actually make million-dollar decisions at 3 a.m, or were they just inventing new ways to commit financial crimes? And just how close did we all come to the entire economy being run by people who thought Cabbage Patch Kids were a wise investment? Congratulations. You've just woken up on Wall Street. It's 1986. You're in a power suit, your heart's beating double time, and your only goal today is to make enough money to buy a sports car you'll never have time to drive. Good luck. Welcome to your new morning routine. The alarm shrieks before dawn, not that you really slept anyway. You lurch out of bed, bleary-eyed, heart still pounding from last night's networking. You're about to face the first battle of the day, tying a power tie with hands that are already shaking. The bedroom is dark except for the ghostly glow of the digital clock, which flashes an unholy 4:59. The air smells faintly of cologne, old coffee, and just a hint of desperation. Your suit hangs from the closet door like a silent judge, daring you to mess up the Windsor knot again. The sheets are tangled from hours of anxious tossing, a nightly wrestling match between your ambitions and your adrenal glands. Sleep? That's for people with fewer things to prove. Your feet hit the carpet, and you wince as yesterday's Wall Street Journal crinkles underfoot, a reminder of the markets, the madness, and the fact that you still haven't learned to pick up after yourself. You shuffle to the bathroom, eyes half closed, performing your ablutions with all the enthusiasm of a condemned man on the way to the gallows. The cold water slaps you awake, or tries to, but your mind is already racing with ticker symbols, half-finished trades, and the looming fear of a memo titled Cost-Cutting Measures. The ritual is as precise as a military operation. Shower, shave, splash on a cologne that promises confidence, but mostly just burns your pores. You stare in the mirror, practicing that Wall Street smile, part charm, part challenge, and entirely fake before sunrise. Under your eyes, there are bags big enough to carry a weekend's worth of regrets. But there's no time to dwell, not when the city outside is already humming with pre-dawn traffic and the first taxis are honking at phantoms. Now, the tie. Always the tie. On paper, it's just a strip of silk, but in your hands, it's a talisman and a curse. You loop, you pull, you curse softly. The first attempt is lopsided, the second is too tight, and the third, well, that's the one you're wearing. Because there's no time to mess around. You stand back and admire your reflection, as if the right tie will somehow armour you against the shouting, the deals, and the fact that you forgot your boss's birthday. Again. Your breakfast is a negotiation. Coffee, black and scalding, paired with a piece of toast so burnt it qualifies as a write-off. Maybe a banana if you're feeling healthy, or more likely just another cigarette. You check your pager, because it's the 1980s and nothing says high-tech like being reachable at all hours, and there's already a message from the office. Call ASAP. Numbers off in Tokyo. Great. Nothing starts the day like a minor international panic. As you gulp down caffeine, you're running through your checklist. Wallet, keys, briefcase, last vestiges of hope. You scan the headlines, Dow futures, insider scandals, a new type of microwave pizza. Priorities. You slip into your suit, the fabric stiff with starch and the weight of expectations. Every pocket is already full. Calculator, business cards, a roll of Tums for that acid reflux that's become your most loyal companion. The elevator ride is a silent competition with your own reflection. You practice a look of cool indifference, the kind that says I got this even though your stomach is doing somersaults. Outside, the city is waking up in a cacophony of screeching brakes, distant sirens, and the hopeful buzz of another day's hustle. You join the stream of other traders and hopefuls, all of you blinking against the fluorescent dawn like moths drawn to a particularly aggressive light bulb. Stepping into the street, you breathe in a lungful of exhaust, ambition, and the slight tang of fear. You are awake, you are alive, and for better or worse, you are exactly where you wanted to be. Because in the world of 1980s Wall Street, if you weren't up before the sun, you might as well have not shown up at all. Good morning, and good luck. Forget avocado toast. The 1980s, Wall Street breakfast is a cigarette, black coffee, and something extra if you can get it past the doorman. The most important meal of the day is whatever will get you vertical and semi-coherent before the opening bell. Let's be clear, the morning meal is less about nutrition and more about brute survival. You shuffle into your kitchen, a generous term for the 3 square feet between your fridge and your answering machine. The fridge hums a tired, ominous tune. Inside, there's a carton of orange juice that expired during the Carter administration, a container of questionable takeout, and a lone can of Tab, which you regard with the suspicion of a man who's seen too much. But food is irrelevant. You're not here to eat, you're here to fuel. You reach for the coffee pot. It's stained, chipped, and, if you're honest, an archaeological record of every panic-induced morning for the past month. You scoop in grounds with the reckless abandon of a gambler, dump in water, and pray it's strong enough to jolt you awake or at least mask the taste of existential dread. By the time it sputters to life, the apartment is already thick with the smell of burnt hope and desperation. Cigarette in hand, you step out onto the fire escape, joining a chorus of other early risers across Manhattan, all clutching their own little white flag of surrender to the day. The first drag is a small rebellion against time, a defiant not yet to the sun crawling over the skyline. The city below is already rumbling, honking horns, the distant bark of street vendors, the pulse of the subways below like the world's least reassuring heartbeat. You balance your mug precariously on the railing and pull out a battered copy of the Wall Street Journal, skimming the headlines while nicotine sharpens your focus to something approaching predatory. You're not reading for enlightenment. You're scanning for opportunity, threat, and the inevitable reminder that someone, somewhere, is already making more money than you. Now, about that something extra. You know the routine. It's an open secret, the city's worst-kept confidence, passed from one suit to another like an inside tip. A discreet little envelope, a quick sniff in the privacy of a bathroom stall, a surge of artificial confidence that's as much a part of the ritual as lacing your shoes. If your hands stop shaking, that's just a bonus. You know it's unhealthy, you know it's unsustainable, but you also know that on Wall Street nobody gets a trophy for pacing themselves. Breakfast, then, is a multi-sensory experience. The bitter bite of overbrewed coffee, the acrid comfort of tobacco, and the electric sting of whatever vitamin supplement the decade has provided. By 7:30 you're jittery, hyper-aware, and vaguely convinced you can see through time, at least until the crash an hour later. Food, if you remember, is an afterthought. Maybe you grab a bagel on the street, gnawing on it absently while your mind races with numbers, deadlines, and the possibility that the guy in the pinstripe suit ahead of you is after the same account. Sometimes you splurge on a stale Danish at the deli, convinced that a little sugar will help offset the 4 cups of black coffee already swirling through your bloodstream. If you're feeling especially wild, you butter the bagel. Congratulations, you're now considered reckless by your cardiologist. The concept of healthy breakfast is a punchline. You'll eat real food at lunch, maybe. For now, breakfast is about momentum, not sustenance. You're a shark in a polyester suit. Stop moving, and you die. You join the endless parade of traders flooding the sidewalks, cups in hand, caffeine on their breath, all of you united by a single desperate hope. To survive the next 12 hours without collapsing or confessing, you have no idea what you're doing. So there you are, vertical, vibrating, and ready to face the trading floor. Maybe your heart's going a little too fast. Maybe your teeth are grinding like a fax machine on the fritz. Maybe, just maybe, you wonder if there's a better way to start the day. But that's a thought for another morning, another decade, maybe another lifetime. For now, you inhale, sip, and step into the fray. Breakfast is served. The subway is a Darwinian gauntlet of sweat, suits, and the distinct aroma of fear. If you can survive the morning rush without losing your wallet or your sanity, you're ready for anything the trading floor throws at you. Let's paint the scene. You descend the cracked steps into the subway, propelled by a sense of purpose and the gentle nudge of 1,000 other commuters who all look like they either haven't slept or have seen things you wouldn't believe. The platform is a damp cavern echoing with screeches, announcements, and the resigned sighs of people who know that train arriving in 5 minutes is just another Wall Street lie. As the train pulls in, it's immediately clear that maximum capacity is merely a polite suggestion. The doors wheeze open, and you're greeted by a wall of humanity, pressed so close that personal space is a distant, laughable memory. You wedge yourself into a pocket of standing room between a woman reading the Times with the patience of a saint, a man muttering calculations to himself, possibly your future boss, and a bike messenger who's just happy to be out of the rain. Somewhere in the mix, there's always a guy in a three-piece suit valiantly attempting to eat a cream cheese bagel. Gravity be damned. You grip the nearest pole as the car lurches forward. The smell is a complex bouquet, eau de coffee, a hint of cologne, 2 decades of industrial dust, and the unmistakable tang of existential panic. Somewhere in the distance, a busker with more ambition than talent begins to serenade the car with Eye of the Tiger on a battered trumpet. No one applauds. Everyone silently calculates if their headphones are loud enough to drown out the entire experience. Each stop is a test of will and reflexes. More people squeeze in, defying the known laws of physics. Your face is now 6 inches from someone's armpit, and you've developed a new appreciation for clinical strength deodorant, or its tragic absence. You try to keep your briefcase tucked close. Pickpockets prowl these cars like hungry wolves. Wallet in the front pocket, keys wedged between your fingers. You look like you're about to mug yourself for practice. You stand swaying, counting stations, mentally rehearsing your opening lines for the day. Morning, Greg. Yes, I saw the Nicky drop. No, I don't have the quarterly numbers, they're on Linda's desk. Yes, my therapist says the same thing about my stress dreams. Sometimes you lock eyes with a fellow commuter, a momentary truce, an unspoken pact. We're all in this together, and we might die here. The train jolts and you nearly lose your balance, managing to step only slightly onto someone's foot. You mumble an apology. Nobody responds. On this subway, apologies are a non-renewable resource, and you're already running low. The conductor's announcements are muffled and incomprehensible, but everyone pretends to understand. There's a brief moment of panic when the train stalls between stations, lights flickering. In that breathless silence, the entire car contemplates their life choices, their investments, and whether they should have gone into something less stressful like lion taming. Eventually the doors open at your stop. The crowd bursts onto the platform, flowing up the steps in a tide of urgency and irritation. Your shoes stick to something suspiciously sticky, but you keep moving. This is not the place for introspection. You emerge into the blinding daylight of the city, lungs full of exhaust, coffee, and the faint whiff of hot pretzels. You straighten your tie, brush the subway grime from your jacket, and try to look like a person who didn't just survive a minor disaster. Congratulations. If you've made it this far, you've already beaten the odds. The commute is a crucible, an obstacle course that forges steelier nerves in a thicker skin. If you can handle New York's morning chaos, you can handle anything Wall Street can throw at you, whether it's market mayhem, a screaming boss, or another day when you wonder if you should have just stayed home. Welcome to the jungle. The opening bell is the least of your worries. The suit isn't just clothes, it's armour. Shoulder pads sharp enough to wound a rival, ties wider than your moral grey area, and shoes shine to a weaponized gloss. You dress not for the job you want, but for the job you're terrified of losing. It's the 1980s, and the morning ritual isn't complete until you've squeezed yourself into enough synthetic fabric to choke a small horse. There's an entire ecosystem in your closet, all battling for dominance. Pinstripes, chalk stripes, houndstooth, the occasional rogue paisley. You run your hand along the options, knowing that today's fortunes might hinge on the statement you make before you've even had your second cup of coffee. Will you go full navy blue, classic, safe, aggressively boring, or risk the grey with subtle window pane, the mark of a man who might just short his own grandmother? You pull on your jacket, feeling the instant transformation. The shoulder pads jack you up a full 1.5 inches, a silent dare to anyone considering taking your spot on the elevator. The lining is silky, the fit aggressively snug, and the overall effect is a cross between a Wall Street shark and a linebacker in a midlife crisis. Your shirt is starched to the tensile strength of a sheet of drywall, and the collar could double as a medieval torture device if your meeting goes badly. Buttons gleam in the bathroom light. Each one is a promise. Today you will look like you know exactly what you're doing, even if you're still not sure what a reverse repo actually is. Next comes the tie, a commitment, a declaration, and a hazard all in one. The width, at least 4 inches, preferably more. The pattern, something that looks expensive from across the room, but abstract enough to keep people guessing. You knot it tight, tug it straight, and admire yourself in the mirror with the grim satisfaction of a gladiator strapping on his helmet. There's no room for subtlety here. Subtlety is for people with trust funds. Your belt is a solid slab of leather, likely worth more than your first car. Cufflinks, small, unnecessary, but non-negotiable, are snapped into place. You slide on your watch, a Rolex if you're winning, a knockoff if you're not, but who can really tell at 200 miles per hour? On your feet, shoes so polished you could signal passing aircraft. You walk differently in these shoes, heel-toe, with just a little swagger, because nothing says I'm on top like the sound of Italian leather hitting marble. Let's talk about accessories. Pocket squares, silk of course, folded in geometric defiance of chaos. A gold pen tucked into your jacket pocket just in case you need to sign something important, or at least look like you might. Your briefcase is a small fortress containing the essentials: calculator, deal sheets, mints, aspirin, and the business cards of everyone you've ever met, ever, all bound together with a rubber band and blind hope. As you step out the door, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in the lobby's mirrored wall. The suit does something to you, rewiring your posture, your gait, even the set of your jaw. You're not a person now, you are a brand. You're the living embodiment of 1980s financial optimism, excess, and denial. You may have only $4 to your name after rent, but you look like a man about to close a billion-dollar merger before breakfast. On the subway, you spot your kind, the army of padded shoulders, shiny shoes, and determined faces. There's a silent hierarchy determined entirely by tailoring. Too boxy, newbie, too slim, show off, slight bulge in the left pocket, carrying secrets, probably tic-tacs, possibly insider trading notes. You learn to scan a man's suit and size up his worth faster than you can say junk bond. If the suit is your armor, then the unwritten dress code is the real battlefield. Show up underdressed, and you'll be quietly mocked into oblivion. Overdress, and you might just get away with it. After all, excess is the lingua franca of the trading floor. But the moment you get sloppy, the sharks start to circle. Wrinkled lapel, someone's already betting against you. At the end of the day, when you finally peel off your armor and drape it over a chair, you realize you've survived another round of sartorial warfare. The suit did its job. It protected you, projected you, and maybe, just maybe, fooled everyone, including yourself, into believing you belong here. In the 1980s, that's half the battle won. Step onto the floor and you're instantly bombarded by a hurricane of screaming, sweating, phone-slamming humans. It's a ballet of chaos, and the only music is the sound of fortunes being made and lost in nanoseconds. Before you can even blink, the noise hits you like a physical force. The entire room is an arena, a boiling pit of navy suits and desperate ambition. Every square inch is claimed by someone shouting into a phone, waving a fistful of paper, or trying to be heard above the din. The air is thick with the scent of cheap aftershave, cold coffee, and the sort of fear you only get when your entire career can evaporate before your lunch order arrives. There's no time for hesitation. Hesitate, and you're roadkill. Phones ring with an urgency usually reserved for house fires. Fax machines rattle in the background, spitting out contracts that someone will sign, lose, or accidentally use to mop up a spilled gin and tonic. Everywhere you look, men, and a few women, looking twice as fierce to be taken half as seriously, are locked in mortal combat with the markets, with their clients, and sometimes with their own blood pressure. The language is half English, half gibberish. Buy. Sell. No, not that one. The other one. You quickly realize that here, volume is a form of negotiation. The choreography is brutal. You dodge a flying legal pad, duck under an arm waving a contract like a battle flag, sidestep a guy whose face has gone the shade of a ripe tomato because he just lost $500,000 in 14 seconds. There's no personal space, no downtime. If you stop moving, you'll be swept away by the stampede, your shoes lost forever in a sea of expensive leather. You try to focus, but your senses are on overload. There are ticker screens everywhere, on the walls, at every desk, embedded in the very soul of the place. Blinking numbers and symbols that mean everything and nothing, depending on whether you're on the right side of a deal. Someone is always running. Someone is always yelling. Someone is always crying. But they'll claim it's just allergies or a contact lens malfunction. It's survival of the loudest, sharpest, and most caffeinated. Deals are struck in seconds, sometimes with a handshake, sometimes with a look, sometimes with a promise everyone knows will be broken before the closing bell. The hierarchy here is clear but fluid. If you make money, you're a genius. If you lose money, you're a lesson. The only thing more volatile than the market is the collective mood. Today's hero is tomorrow's cautionary tale, immortalized in rumor, and maybe, if you're lucky, a cautionary warning in the training manual. Occasionally, a manager prowls through the chaos, barking orders and dispensing pep talks so sharp they could double as HR violations. You keep your head down, your voice up, and your nerves steeled. The only thing more dangerous than a falling stock is a falling out with your boss. Those can be career-ending before you even see them coming. But there's an energy here you can't deny. You feel it in your bones, a jittery electric buzz that makes you believe for just a moment that you can do anything. It's intoxicating and terrifying, addictive in the way only a high-stakes, high-stress environment can be. Your pulse thrums with possibility and dread. You look around, and for a split second you wonder, is it worth it? Is anyone actually in control? And then the bell rings again, and it's back to work, another round in the world's most cutthroat arena. By day's end, you're hoarse, exhausted, and unsure whether you've aged a day or a decade. All you know for sure is this. Nobody survives the trading floor unchanged. You either become part of the storm, or you're swept away. Just another casualty in the history of pure financial carnage. Everything has a code, hand signals, grunts, cryptic notes scrawled on napkins. If you don't know the lingo, you're either invisible or you're lunch, sometimes both. From the moment you set foot on the trading floor, you realize you've wandered into a parallel universe, a place where communication is more art than science, and the average conversation could be mistaken for a string of random noises and obscure gestures. Forget everything you learned in business school. Out here, language is a weapon, a shield, and sometimes an outright trap. Let's start with the hand signals. There's the two-fingered flick for sell, the flat palm for hold, the underhand scoop for buy, and that's just the basics. Add in a frantic wave, a raised eyebrow, and a not-so-subtle throat slash, and you're either closing the deal of your career or accidentally challenging the guy from Merrill Lynch to a duel. The veterans can have entire conversations across the room using nothing but a twitch, a nod, and a look that would get you arrested on the subway. But it's not just gestures. Verbal shorthand is everywhere. You'll hear bullish, bearish, going long, short squeeze, and pump and dump all in the same breath. None of it intended for outside ears. Most of the floor operates in a kind of frenzied patter that sounds like auctioneering crossed with competitive speed dating. 10 at 8. Lift the offer. Hit the bid. If you don't jump in at just the right second, your chance is gone. And heaven help you if you ever admit you don't know what something means. You'll get eaten alive, and your confusion will become office legend before you can Google what is a butterfly spread. It gets more cryptic from there. Desk drawers are filled with napkins covered in what looks like an amateur's attempt at hieroglyphics. Columns of numbers, arrows, and symbols that make sense only to the person who wrote them. Need to pass on a tip without alerting your boss. Slide a post-it with a doodle of a bear next to your neighbour's elbow. It's subtle. It's clever. It's also just an excuse for grown adults to act like they're running an after-school spy club. Eavesdropping is a professional sport. Everyone's listening, pretending not to, and then repeating what they overheard as gospel truth. Sometimes you find yourself whispering rumours about the whale in energy, or the guy with inside info on widgets, without ever knowing who or what you're talking about. Gossip is currency. Misinformation is strategy. Truth is, well, optional. Then there are the nicknames. Oh, the nicknames. Nobody uses real names on the floor unless you're in serious trouble. You'll be numbers, big dog, rabbit, the ghost, or, if you're unlucky, crash test dummy. These names stick for years, sometimes following you to entirely new jobs, the ultimate Wall Street souvenir, And let's not forget the coded insults. He's got a good sense of risk means he's a walking disaster. He's aggressive means wear a helmet. She's sharp is rare, and if you ever hear she's lucky, that's the highest compliment anyone gets. Luck is the only thing more valuable than a good lawyer. Communication on the trading floor is also about what isn't said. A long pause, a pointed silence, or the sudden, meaningful clearing of a throat can kill a deal or save your skin. The eyes do half the talking. The feet do the rest. If you see people suddenly migrating to one corner, follow. They know something you don't. If you want to fit in, you've got to learn the language fast. Fake it until you make it, or, at the very least, until someone throws you a glossary. And even then, half the fun is watching new hires flail, inventing new signals and hoping nobody notices they just signed off on ordering 400 cases of the wrong stock. Eventually, you'll catch on. You'll invent a signal of your own, maybe even a signature grunt. Because on Wall Street, understanding the code is survival. And if you can't speak the language, don't worry, someone will translate, usually at your expense. Your desk is an altar to anxiety. 5 phones, 3 pages, and a Rolodex that weighs more than a small child. You're running the numbers, running your mouth, and running out of time before the next big score or disaster. Let's take a look at your sacred space, wedged somewhere between the chaos of the trading floor and the faint hope of a lunch break that never comes. The desk itself is a battered chunk of metal and laminate that has seen more drama than a daytime soap opera. It's cluttered with piles of manila folders, dog-eared spreadsheets, and so many sticky notes that you've started color-coding your panic. There's an ever-present cup of coffee, cold of course, a pair of reading glasses you're never sure actually belong to you, and a stack of mystery pens, none of which actually work. The phones ring constantly, each one dedicated to a different flavour of crisis. One's for clients who want reassurance that their money is safe. It's not. Another is for the guys in accounting who seem to believe you can perform miracles with tax codes. And the third is an internal hotline to your favourite pizza place. Because you know, deep down, that food is the only certainty in your life. The last 2 are reserved for emergencies, market collapses, and the occasional friendly call from compliance, reminding you not to say anything that could get everyone arrested. You answer them all with the finesse of a late-night DJ, spinning bad news into opportunity and panic into a charming nasal hum. Behind the phones is the Rolodex, a relic from an age when contacts were a physical burden and status was measured in alphabetical tabs. Each card is a tiny piece of leverage, a broker's private line, a banker's home number, your dentist's cousin who happens to know a guy at the SEC. You flip through it with the gravitas of a fortune teller, hoping to divine a winning trade or at least someone who owes you a favour. 3 pages perch on the edge of the desk, each threatening to vibrate itself off the surface and into oblivion. One is for internal alerts, bonds tanking again. One is for client emergencies, call me back before I sue. And one is, you're pretty sure, just there to keep you humble. Every time one goes off, you jump like you've been tased, then calmly return to your mental juggling act, pretending this is all completely normal. You've got screens everywhere. Tiny green numbers flickering, graphs dipping and soaring, windows popping up with messages you don't dare ignore. There's a calculator glued to your hand, the equals key worn down from years of desperate hopes. The keyboard is stained, the mousepad is peeling, and your chair creaks ominously every time you lean back to contemplate whether you should have just opened a hot dog stand instead. Somewhere, half buried under contracts and ancient receipts, is your lucky paperweight, a chunk of lucite containing a single dollar bill, given to you by the last guy who cracked under the pressure and left to find inner peace selling timeshares in Florida. You rub it absently before every call, hoping some of his dubious luck will rub off. Lunch is a concept, not a guarantee. More often, you're scarfing down a sandwich over a spreadsheet, crumbs caught between the keys, mustard staining the last clean corner of your tie. If you do get a break, it's to dash to the copy machine, which is currently jammed and making noises like a wounded animal. Your desk is also a magnet for colleagues in distress. Someone's always hovering, leaning in, whispering tips, rumours, or outright lies. You develop a sixth sense for knowing when a quick question is about to turn into a career-defining disaster. Amid the madness, you thrive, or at least you pretend to. The constant rush, the endless deals, the sense that you're playing chess on a board where the pieces occasionally catch fire, it's all part of the deal. The desk is your fortress, your confessional, your war room. And when the bell rings at day's end, you stare at the cluttered chaos, wondering how you'll ever do it all again tomorrow. And yet, deep down, you already know you will. Because in this game, the dealer's desk isn't just where you work, it's where you live. It's noon, which means it's time to drop a week's salary on steak, lobster and drinks so strong they should come with a warning label. Deals are made, secrets are traded, and the breadsticks are the only thing anyone actually digests. You step out of the chaos of the trading floor and into the echoing marble foyer of the nearest expense account temple. A steakhouse with enough mahogany and brass to build a battleship. The lighting is low, the air heavy with the scent of charred meat and ambition, and every table is a battlefield in the war for social dominance. Waiters glide by in pressed shirts, calling you sir or ma'am even if you look like you've just survived an avalanche of ticker tape and regret. There's a ritual to the seating, never near the door, too exposed, never in a corner, too weak, and always somewhere you can be seen but not overheard. Menus arrive, but no one actually reads them. You already know the choices by heart: steak, or lobster, with a token salad that's ordered only as a cover story. Your client orders the New York strip, rare, because he wants you to know he's fearless. You follow suit because the only thing riskier than losing money is being the person who asks for chicken at a steakhouse. The waiter nods sagely, as if you've passed some ancient test. The real menu is the drinks list. A round of martinis appears so quickly, you wonder if the bartender is psychic. Each one arrives ice cold, served in a glass that might as well be a trophy. 2 sips in, you're already convinced that this is the most important meal of your life. 3 sips, and you're ready to sign away your soul, your bonus, and possibly your childhood dog for a good return on investment. Lunch is performance art. You talk shop in coded language, dancing around SEC regulations like they're the world's most boring game of Twister. Our friends in Chicago means competitors. Looking at new opportunities means we're plotting to eat your lunch. Breadsticks are broken, buttered, and used as props in high-stakes negotiations. The more carbs on your plate, the more leverage you seem to have. As the plates arrive, slabs of steak sizzling, lobsters glaring at you with the resigned eyes of crustacean martyrs, you settle in for the main event. Knives flash. Business cards are discreetly exchanged under the table. Sometimes entire deals are sketched on napkins, destined to be framed if successful or discreetly eaten if the market tanks. You're not just eating, you're making alliances, calling bluffs, and setting traps. Every bite is a move on the chessboard, every refill a test of endurance. Around you, the restaurant is alive with similar rituals. Corner booths echo with half-whispered mergers, breakups, and the sort of stories that, if printed, would clear out the building faster than a fire drill. Waiters hover, refilling glasses and pretending not to hear you offer a 6-figure bribe for a little inside information. The air hums with speculation, bravado, and just a hint of impending litigation. It's not all posturing, sometimes it's deeply personal. The power lunch is where alliances are forged and enemies made, where you might learn a secret that could shift the entire market or, more likely, just the reason your client's first marriage didn't work out. Empires rise and fall between the appetizer and dessert is non-negotiable. New York cheesecake or nothing at all. Coffee follows, thick and bitter, a bracing jolt that signals it's time to get back to work. The check arrives, and it's handled with the practiced choreography of a hostage negotiation. Credit cards are produced, disputed, and snatched away. Nobody wants to appear cheap, but nobody actually wants to pay. Eventually someone wins, which means everyone loses except the restaurant. You stumble back out onto the sidewalk, full, tipsy, and slightly poorer, but feeling like a titan all the same. The afternoon stretches before you like a fresh set of opportunities. Power lunch complete, you're ready for whatever comes next, even if it's just indigestion and a flurry of regret-laden voicemails. In the world of Wall Street, a good lunch is more than a meal. It's the battleground where tomorrow's fortunes are made, one martini at a time. The bathrooms are less about hygiene, more about discreet negotiations, and for some, emergency energy management. Welcome to the real stock exchange, where even the janitor knows too much. You push open the door with the same hesitation you'd use entering a medieval dungeon, steeling yourself for whatever horror lies within. The bathroom on Wall Street is a sanctuary only in the loosest possible sense. Sure, there are stalls and sinks and a vague promise of privacy, but that's all quickly shattered by the echoing cacophony of running water, cellophane crinkling, and whispered deals being struck over the drone of an ancient hand dryer. The moment you cross the threshold, you're greeted by the sight of 3 men in pinstripe suits hunched over the sinks, one splashing water on his face, another nervously fixing his tie, and the third negotiating the finer points of a merger into the receiver of a beige-corded phone he's smuggled in from his office. There's a certain camaraderie here, a brotherhood of the sleep-deprived, the over-caffeinated and the mildly panicked, united by the desperate need for a breather from the relentless roar of the trading floor. But privacy? Forget it. Every conversation is at risk of being overheard, dissected, and passed around like market gossip. The janitor, mopping the floor with a look of deep existential fatigue, pauses just long enough to pick up a stray bit of insider information. He's heard it all. Who's selling? Who's buying? Who's having a meltdown over the price of copper futures? If you want something to stay secret, the bathroom is the last place you should say it, but also, paradoxically, the first place you try. In one corner, a junior analyst stands in front of the mirror rehearsing a pitch, whispering to his own reflection, hoping to summon the confidence to face a boardroom full of sharks. In another, 2 executives lean in close, speaking in code, passing folded slips of paper and subtle threats beneath the cover of a running tap. And let's not forget the frantic paper towel shuffle, which is the unofficial signal that negotiations are about to get heated. No need to shout, just let the hand dryer drown out your most incriminating admissions. And then there's the less glamorous but even more urgent matter of energy management. Half the traffic in and out of the stalls has less to do with biology and more to do with chemistry. The hallowed tradition of the midday rally, a quick surreptitious boost in the privacy of a locked stall, is as much a part of the Wall Street routine as the closing bell. If the sniffles sound suspiciously frequent, everyone just pretends they've got a cold. It's flu season all year round on the street. You get used to the scent, a powerful blend of aftershave, Lysol, nervous sweat, and something sharper you can't quite identify, but suspect would test positive in a lab. You get used to the sounds, zippers, coughs, the low murmur of a conference call dialed in from a toilet, because multitasking is not a suggestion, it's a survival skill. You get used to the glances, furtive, assessing, a silent calculation of whether you're here for business, pleasure, or damage control. Occasionally, an actual boardroom blowout will spill over into the bathroom. Red-faced managers storm in, barking into cell phones, slamming briefcases against the sinks, and conducting post-mortems on failed trades with the same intensity as generals plotting a counterattack. You learn to keep your head down, eyes forward, and hands washed, a rare gesture of optimism. The janitor finishes a sweep and offers a knowing nod, as if to say, "Good luck out there." You adjust your tie, wipe your hands on a paper towel, and take a deep breath that tastes vaguely of bleach and ambition. Whatever secrets were exchanged, whatever pep talk you gave yourself, you leave the bathroom changed, maybe a little cleaner, probably not, but definitely more prepared for the absurdity that awaits. Back through the door, you plunge once more into the wild. You've survived another round in the only room on Wall Street where everyone is both equal and exposed. And now, with nerves steadied and adrenaline topped off, you're ready to face the trading floor, at least until your next emergency pit stop. Every ring is either salvation or doom. You learn to talk fast, listen faster, and never ever put anyone on hold unless you want to risk your career, your dignity, or both. It's not just a phone call, it's a test, a ticking time bomb, a pop quiz you didn't study for and can't afford to fail. The phones on your desk ring in unpredictable symphonies, each with its own personality, the shrill, urgent jangle from a client in full meltdown, the steady, deliberate buzz of a senior partner who believes in punctual terror, and the suspiciously cheerful trill that means someone somewhere is about to ruin your day. Sometimes it's all three at once. Your reflexes sharpen. You develop a sixth sense for which call to take, which to punt, and which to answer with your everything's fine, don't panic voice, while mouthing silent curses to nobody in particular. One hand is always cradling a receiver, the other is scribbling numbers, hunting through the Rolodex, or, in extreme moments, just gripping the edge of the desk for dear life. Coffee sloshes, sweat forms, and the cord wraps around your arm like a python, a gentle reminder that escape is not an option. Pick up a ringing phone, and you might find yourself fielding $1 billion deal or $1 billion disaster. There's no in-between. Your tone has to be perfect, confident but not cocky, urgent but not desperate, friendly but not familiar, unless you're talking to Ed in accounting, in which case you can drop the act and bond over mutual suffering. Everyone else? Assume they're armed with both money and malice. Sometimes it's a client who's just read a terrifying headline and wants reassurance that his aggressive growth portfolio isn't about to turn into aggressive shrinkage. Sometimes it's a broker with a hot tip spoken so fast and so cryptically, you wonder if you're the last contestant on a financial game show. And sometimes, God help you, it's compliance, calling to clarify your latest creative interpretation of regulations. The danger is everywhere. You know you're never more than one wrong word away from being quoted, recorded, or accidentally agreeing to a trade you'll regret before the phone even clicks. The first rule of Wall Street? Never say anything over the phone you wouldn't want repeated at your disciplinary hearing. The second rule? Don't bet your career that anyone is actually listening to you. Multi-line juggling becomes second nature. You patch in a colleague online too, put a client on hold, but not really. You're just covering the mouthpiece and whispering frantically, and try to decipher the hold music, which has a kind of mocking rhythm. Every second counts. If you pause too long, the person on the other end assumes you're incompetent, distracted, or, worst of all, talking to their competitor. Call waiting is both a blessing and a curse. You're grateful for the warning, but now you have to choose which relationship to risk. And yet, the best, or worst news always comes via phone. You might close the deal of your life in 30 seconds flat, heart pounding as you make promises you're only 60% sure you can keep. Or, with the same casual ease, you might lose a fortune listening to the click of someone else hanging up forever. Sometimes, silence on the other end is the worst outcome of all. No ringing, no shouting, no anything. Just the quiet knowledge that your luck has run out. By day's end, your ear is hot, your voice is hoarse, and you're haunted by phantom rings that no longer exist. The adrenaline lingers, mingling with regret and relief in equal measure. You replay every call in your head. Did I say the right thing? Did I promise too much? Should I have laughed at that joke about pork bellies? In this world, the phone isn't just a tool. It's a lifeline, a weapon, a source of endless anxiety, and, sometimes, the only way to hear the sweet sound of success. So you hang up, brace yourself, and wait for the next ring. 'Cause out here, you're only as good as your last phone call, and the next one is always just a heartbeat away. No one actually leaves at 5. If you do, you're either unemployed or a time traveller. The real work starts after dark when the bosses go home and the shadiest trades get made. At 4:55 p.m, the clock taunts you from the corner of your monitor. Somewhere in the world, decent people are heading home, microwaving dinner, or preparing for an evening jog, but not you, not anyone in the building who values their job, their bonus, or their ability to pay rent. Here on Wall Street, quitting time is a concept as fictional as ethical investment banking in 1987. The office actually gets louder after hours, not quieter, as everyone's performance anxiety peaks along with the after-hours ticker. You stretch, crack your knuckles, and make a show of shuffling papers. This is the sacred transition from legitimate business to whatever it takes. You know the drill. The bosses, the adults in the room, finally pack up and leave, off to dinner, charity galas, or simply to count their money somewhere with softer lighting. The second the elevator doors close, a palpable shift settles over the office. Ties are loosened, shoes kicked off, and suddenly, everyone you work with becomes 20% more interesting and 50% more reckless. The working late excuse is an art form, refined over countless cycles of panicked productivity and creative justification. There's the classic, big client wants last-minute revisions. There's the noble, I'm double-checking those numbers, don't want to let the team down. And the humble brag, you know me, just grinding. No one admits that they're really waiting for the phone to ring, the right number to pop, or the opportunity to slip in one more order before the Asian markets close. Or maybe you're just buying time before you have to face your own reflection in the mirrored elevator. With the office thinned out, alliances emerge and secrets surface. The night shift isn't a formal roster. It's a loose fellowship of insomniacs, risk-takers, and those desperately chasing redemption for that one catastrophic mistake last quarter. You swap stories in whispers, comparing horror tales about margin calls and the time someone tried to expense a case of Dom Perignon as office supplies. Laughter here is louder, rawer. If someone's still around at 8 p.m, you know you can trust them, if only because they're too exhausted to stab you in the back. The The phones don't stop, but their tone changes. Deals are made in half light, with the kind of plausible deniability that evaporates with the sunrise. "Are you sure we can do this?" someone whispers. "Does anyone care if we can't?" someone else mutters, already faxing a contract across 3 time zones. The cleaning crew works around you, giving you a silent nod of solidarity as they vacuum up crumbs and shredded evidence. If you're hungry, you eat whatever's left from the last working lunch, a cold slice of pizza, a lukewarm soda, or if you're lucky, a sad bagel hardened into the approximate texture of a discus. Sometimes, out of the blue, someone orders Chinese for the whole floor. Fortune cookies are broken, read, and, without fail, immediately interpreted as financial advice. You will soon come into wealth. Well, here's hoping. Outside, the city shifts. The world beyond the windows glows with yellow cabs and neon, and every office tower seems to be blinking Morse code in caffeine jitters. Inside, you switch from spreadsheets to plotting your next move. The real sharks, you're told, are the ones still circling at midnight, reading between the lines of financial filings and prepping for a dawn that promises more chaos. The best working late excuse, of course, is success. If you close the deal, nobody questions your methods. If you don't, well, you might as well keep your desk lamp on and start brainstorming tomorrow's excuse. By the time you do finally leave, it's the early hours of the morning. The security guard is your new best friend, and you're pretty sure you could sleep standing up if not for the triple espresso coursing through your veins. You step into the night, knowing tomorrow you'll do it all again. After all, nobody remembers who went home at 5, but everyone remembers who closed the deal at midnight. After hours is where reputations are made and destroyed over overpriced cocktails and questionable appetizers. You're not just drinking, you're auditioning for tomorrow's promotion or next week's cautionary tale. As the sun dips behind Manhattan's jagged skyline, the financial district transforms from a battleground of spreadsheets and sweat into a playground of neon signs and eager grins. The suits loosen, the laughter gets louder, and suddenly, every watering hole within 5 blocks of Wall Street is packed with the city's most ambitious insomniacs. Your badge of entry, a slightly crooked tie, an expense account with a questionable limit, and an appetite for whatever's being fried and passed off as tapas. Happy hour isn't really happy. It's a pressure cooker masquerading as a party. You squeeze into a booth, wedged between a junior analyst who's had too many gin and tonics and a managing director who claims he's just here for the wings, as if anyone believes that. The bar's menu is a parade of cocktails with names like the Hostile Takeover and the Collateralized Lemon Drop. Each drink is more dangerous than the last, both for your liver and your career. The first round is bought by someone with something to prove, always. Shots arrive before anyone's even sat down, the liquid courage that launches 1,000 regrettable toasts. You're only a sip or two in before someone starts casually asking, "So, who's moving up?" The question is innocent enough, but you can feel the room tighten. Promotions are won here, but so are vendettas, the kind that are remembered long after your bar tab is lost to the ages. You master the art of the networking dance, float from group to group, drop just enough gossip to sound plugged in but not enough to be accused of sabotage, compliment the right people, laugh at the boss's jokes, and always keep one eye on the door in case you need to make a sudden dignified exit. You nod, you listen, you commiserate about market swings and the existential dread that comes with being on the bubble. Somewhere between the cheese cubes and the third martini, you realise that everyone is, in their own way, on stage. The bravest souls attempt karaoke, crooning out, "Money, money, money," with the passion of someone who just lost $500,000 on soybean futures. The rest settle for raising their voices to be heard over the jukebox, each story bigger and bolder than the last. Everyone's resume sounds a little shinier after dark. That summer internship at a failed bank becomes a pivotal role in restructuring. Getting fired is spun as seeking new challenges. Deals happen here too. Not the kind you'll see in tomorrow's headlines, but the whispered, tentative alliances and off-the-record tips that might, if you're lucky, turn into your next big break. You scribble notes on cocktail napkins, exchange business cards that will be lost by sunrise, and make promises to circle back that neither party will remember come Monday. But beware. The line between networking and not working is thin, and it gets blurrier with every pour. One too many drinks, and your legendary wit devolves into an ill-advised rant about upper management. You're not the only one watching. HR reps hover near the bar, ears perked for slurred confessions and policy violations. There's always a camera, always a witness, and always someone just waiting to tell the story of how you accidentally spilled a Long Island iced tea on the CFO. By the end of the night, fortunes have shifted. Some leave triumphant, having secured a new mentor, a tip on a hot stock, or at least a ride home in the boss's limo. Others slink away, phone buzzing with regret and the early stirrings of tomorrow's hangover. You, if you're smart, have managed to toe the line, just drunk enough to be memorable, just sober enough to remember why you came. As the city lights blur past your cab window and the world finally quiets, you realise happy hour is less about happiness than survival. On Wall Street you're always on the clock, even when you're off it. And tomorrow, as you nurse your headache and tally the night's wins and losses, you'll do it all again. Because here, after hours is never really after anything. It's just the start of the next game. Once the suits come off, the night begins in earnest. Clubs throb with synth music, the air smells of cologne, and everyone claims to be a vice president of something. Most are just vice presidents of poor decisions. The transition from the fluorescent haze of the office to the strobe-lit dark of the club is both abrupt and surreal. A few hours ago you were hunched over a terminal sweating through your shirt. Now you're gliding into a velvet rope wonderland with enough hair gel to withstand a small hurricane. The city is electric, neon and headlights blurring together as you pile into cabs with colleagues and rivals, because on Wall Street those are often the same people. There's a kind of unspoken competition to see who can get the most outrageous, the most out of control, or the most access to the elusive VIP section. Entry is its own ritual. A handshake, a nod, a crumpled $50 slipped to the bouncer, and suddenly you're inside, greeted by the pounding bass of New Wave and the sweet scent of spilled vodka and ambition. You try to look cool, even if your shoes are still echoing trading floor panic. Every table in the club is its own island of excess. Bottle service is not just encouraged, it's mandatory. Giant magnums of champagne arrive with sparklers and enough confetti to launch a parade. A single drink costs more than your first car, and yet you order two, because here, that's just called blending in. At the bar, introductions are shouted over Duran Duran and Madonna. What do you do? Is never asked. Everyone already knows the answer is finance. The real question is, how much? And for how long before you burn out? The atmosphere is thick with ego and fantasy. The lighting is flattering enough to make even the most exhausted analyst look mysterious and powerful, which is good because everyone's running on a toxic cocktail of adrenaline, caffeine, and whatever was passed around in the bathroom earlier. Someone brags about a big deal, another laughs too loudly, and everyone's a little bit in love with their own legend, at least until the lights come up. The back rooms are even stranger. Deals are brokered over plush couches far from the dance floor. Whispered promises and coded messages float above the din, next quarter's numbers, a tip on an IPO, a rumour about layoffs at a rival firm. It's a swirling haze of secrets, all shared in the hope of turning the night into an advantage for the day to come. Nothing is ever written down, but everyone remembers everything, unless they're lucky enough to forget. Meanwhile, the dance floor is chaos. Ties are wrapped around heads, jackets disappear, and all inhibitions are left with the coat check. It's a strange kind of therapy, temporary, loud, and paid for in cash. The lights spin, the bodies blur, and for a moment you're convinced that the world really does revolve around you and your friends. You might even believe it, at least until you check your bank balance tomorrow morning. By 3 a.m, the glamour is fading. The legends of midnight are nursing bruised egos and spilled drinks in booths that now smell like every regret you've ever made. Someone is crying over a broken heel, someone else is promising to quit first thing tomorrow, and you're just trying to find your wallet and your dignity. The city outside is quiet, the cabs are scarce, and for the first time all day, nobody's shouting. When you finally stumble out, the air feels too fresh, the street too empty. You look around at your equally dazed companions and wonder how you'll survive another sunrise, another boardroom, another night like this. But deep down, you know the answer. You always do. After all, in the 1980s, sleep is optional, ambition is required, and the real party never actually ends, it just gets moved to another room. Forget Wall Street as the temple of capitalism. At night, it's the temple of nosebleeds. The lines are long, the nights are longer, and sleep is something only interns remember. As the sun sets and the city flickers to life, something in the air changes, and it's not just the humidity. You can feel it pulsing through the clubs, the after-hours bars, and the echoing bathrooms of expensive restaurants. Everyone's got somewhere to be, and most of them will get there with the help of a little powdered motivation. If the 1980s had an official currency, it wasn't the dollar. It was cocaine, delivered with a wink, a handshake, and a level of confidence that can only come from someone who hasn't slept in 3 days. Cocaine is everywhere. It floats through boardrooms in discreet little baggies and shows up at rooftop parties, passed between hands so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. It's snorted off toilet tank lids, the backs of compact mirrors, and, if you're particularly brazen, a business card featuring your actual job title. In Wall Street social circles, going to the bathroom is code for a lot more than fixing your hair. Suddenly everyone has sinus issues, and no one can explain why the office Kleenex budget has quadrupled. The ritual is practiced and matter of fact. A quick trip to the stall, a key or a nail or a tiny silver spoon, and a sharp inhale that promises alertness, energy, and the vague hope you'll finally understand derivatives. The rush is instant, a surge of self-belief so powerful you're convinced you could negotiate peace in the Middle East, master the yen-dollar exchange, and still make it to brunch. For about 20 minutes, you're the smartest person in Manhattan. Then, of course, reality returns, and you're just another sweaty, wild-eyed yuppie holding court over a basket of cold French fries. This is the era when productivity is measured in milligrams and sleep is a liability. Why bother going home when you can power through another round? There's always one more deal, one more party, one more night that promises to turn you into a legend or a cautionary tale. The only thing faster than the money is the heartbeat pounding in your chest. The only thing sharper than your suit is the burn in your nostrils. Nobody really talks about the dangers, at least not out loud. Sure, there are jokes about the time a guy sneezed during a client meeting, or when someone's nose started bleeding in the middle of a victory toast, but no one ever actually stops. The pressure to keep up is relentless. After all, if your rival can go 48 hours without blinking, how can you admit you're tired? The culture runs on bravado and the kind of groupthink that turns a health crisis into a punchline. You're part of a brotherhood, and occasionally sisterhood, of self-destruction, bound by shared ambition and shared delusions of invincibility. You convince yourself that you need it, that you deserve it, that everyone's doing it, because let's face it, almost everyone is. Even the straight-edge types have a secret stash for emergencies. The higher you climb, the more people hand you little gifts in bathrooms, clubs and limos. No one wants to be the person who says no. After all, Wall Street is built on risk, and this is just another line item in a long ledger of questionable decisions. But beneath the frantic laughter and sweaty handshakes, the toll adds up. You start to see the cracks, bloodshot eyes, shredded nerves, the friend who just needed a break and never came back. By the time the sun rises and the birds are singing, you're wide awake, heart racing, staring at your reflection in the bathroom mirror and wondering how long you can keep this up. And yet, as you dust off your suit, splash water on your face, and head back into the bright fluorescent buzz of the office, you tell yourself you're fine. You're more than fine. You're a Wall Street warrior, running on ambition, caffeine, and a handful of questionable life choices. Sleep is for the weak. Regret is for tomorrow. For now, the only thing that matters is the next big score, and the hope that nobody's watching when your nose starts bleeding during the morning meeting. A peek inside the average trader's desk is a pharmacist's fever dream. Uppers, downers, breath mints, and a bottle of antacids. The goal isn't health, it's tactical survival. Open your drawer and you'll find a chaotic inventory that makes the local drugstore look understocked. There's no room for sentimental trinkets or family photos here. Every inch is claimed by bottles, blister packs, and crumpled packets promising energy, calm, or at the very least, the ability to keep functioning for one more hour. The modern workplace wellness movement hasn't arrived yet. This is Wall Street, 1986, the golden age of better living through chemistry, and nobody's asking their doctor for advice. It starts, as all things do, with caffeine. Not just coffee, though there are always several lukewarm cups hiding among the paperwork, but also Nodos, Vivarin, and any other over-the-counter stimulant with a name that sounds vaguely medical. Half the floor is on their third pill before noon. You tell yourself it's just to stay sharp, to chase the edge. In reality, your eyelids are twitching, your hands are shaking, and the buzzing in your ears might be either the phone or your own heartbeat. The line between focused and hallucinating gets thinner by the hour. But caffeine is just the beginning. There's a rainbow of pills and powders, each with its own purpose, legend, and cautionary tale. Antacids are non-negotiable, chewable, dissolvable, cherry-flavoured, or chalky. The stress of the day and the 4-alarm chili from the power lunch means your stomach is always at DEFCON 1. You pop them like candy, washing them down with more coffee, hoping to silence the internal combustion long enough to get through the next meeting. Then there's the arsenal of focus aids. Prescription? Maybe. Acquired from a friend of a friend? More likely. The names change, but the promise is the same. Sharper attention, quicker math, the energy to outlast your competition. You learn which pill is for what occasion. The green one for morning meetings, the blue one for afternoon slumps, the little white tablet for emergencies when your brain simply refuses to cooperate. Sometimes you experiment, mixing and matching like a mad scientist with a quarterly bonus on the line. For every up, there must be a down. Enter the tranquilizers and sleep aids, nestled in the back corner of the drawer like a guilty secret. You keep them for nights when the adrenaline won't fade, when every muscle is still buzzing long after the closing bell. They don't always work, but at least they make you feel like you're doing something about the problem. There's a bottle of whiskey somewhere too, strictly for medicinal purposes, or so you claim. The line between after-work relaxation and mid-afternoon crisis management can get pretty blurry. Of course, there are the classics. Painkillers for the tension headache that never really leaves, eye drops for the red-eyed walk of shame to the copier, and a veritable army of breath mints and gum to mask the evidence. You'd be amazed how much business gets done with a mouthful of Altoids and a soul full of regret. All of this is managed with a strange sort of professionalism. You become an expert at timing, when to dose, when to skip, when to chase with water, and when to admit that nothing is going to help except blind luck and tomorrow's lunch. Pills are traded as casually as stock tips. Got a migraine? Try this, my cousin's a doctor. Stressed about the meeting. These'll chill you out, just don't take 2. If you're out, someone else is always willing to share. Wall Street is a jungle, but even the wolves know when to help a fellow predator. And so the cycle continues day after day, drawer after drawer. You're not chasing health, you're chasing survival. Every trader has a system, a secret, a favourite pill for each disaster. You're not sure if you're a professional investor or an amateur chemist. Maybe both. But as long as you make it through the day, the desk drawer pharmacy has done its job. And if you ever forget what's in there, don't worry, your co-workers will remind you, probably with a prescription and a knowing wink. Dating is a competitive sport, but the real romance is between you and your next big bonus. Real intimacy means letting someone see your credit report and not running away. Navigating relationships in 1980s. Wall Street is like trying to time the market. Risky, unpredictable, and sometimes just plain impossible. Your day is spent juggling trades, tickers, and caffeine-induced mood swings, so it's no wonder that after-hours connections tend to be brief, transactional, and scored like a quarterly earnings call. Every date is another round of negotiation. Every dinner a high-stakes merger, and every how was your day? Answered with the same numb recitation of closing bell statistics. It's not that love is dead on Wall Street, it's just frequently stuck in traffic, late for dinner, or on hold waiting for confirmation from Tokyo. Even getting to a first date is a logistical puzzle. You'll cancel and reschedule more times than a delayed IPO. Sorry, something came up at work is both a universal apology and a test. If they can't handle a spontaneous all-nighter or a surprise trip to the office at 11 p.m, they're not cut out for this world. Love is for closers, and commitment means putting up with the world's worst work/life balance. And yet, people try. Couples meet at networking events, over trays of limp shrimp cocktail and watery martinis, their small talk peppered with references to hedge funds and hostile takeovers. Flirting is less about poetry, and more about reciting your job title and last quarter's commissions. So are you a managing director or just ambitious? Is the opening line of choice and answering wrong can end the night before it starts? Every romance is shadowed by the reality of ambition. Dates are scheduled around earnings calls and board meetings, and nothing kills the mood faster than a pager buzzing with after-hours market news. Sometimes you and your partner end up at the same power lunch, accidentally competing for the same client. There's a certain romantic tension in racing each other to close a deal, but also the kind of rivalry that makes for awkward pillow talk. Those who manage to stick it out develop a bond forged in the fire of mutual exhaustion and shared secrets. There are romantic getaways to the Hamptons, squeezed in between tax deadlines and market panics. Weekend escapes involve more conference calls than walks on the beach, and date night often means eating takeout under the glow of Bloomberg terminals. You develop an appreciation for the little things: a voicemail left at a reasonable hour, a surprise coffee waiting on your desk, or someone who understands why you always keep your phone on vibrate, even in bed. Intimacy, for Wall Streeters, is an exercise in radical transparency. You know it's real when you're both comfortable sharing FICO scores, student loan balances, and the gnawing fear that the bull market won't last. Forget whispering sweet nothings. In this world, nothing is sweeter than a mutual agreement to split the rent based on who got the bigger bonus. You talk love languages, but they all sound like the language of spreadsheets. Of course, not everyone's looking for forever. Some pursue relationships with the same ruthlessness they bring to hostile takeovers. Fast, decisive, and over before anyone catches feelings. The clubs and bars are filled with would-be power couples, each on the lookout for a +1 who can match their ambition, or at least their bar tab. Hearts are broken, fortunes are made and lost, and every failed romance is written off as a learning opportunity in the grand ledger of life. Still, somewhere in the mess of business cards and broken promises, genuine connections can form. Maybe it's the analyst who brings you soup when you're sick, or the rival who lets you have the last word in an argument. Maybe it's the simple comfort of knowing someone else understands why you're too exhausted for dinner and too wired to sleep. On Wall Street, love isn't easy, but like everything else here, it's intense, high risk, and, when you get it right, just a little bit legendary. You'll never find a romance like it again, and if it doesn't work out, well, there's always next quarter. The most dangerous thing on Wall Street isn't a market crash, it's a jealous co-worker. Alliances shift faster than stock prices, and nobody trusts anyone except maybe their tailor. The trading floor is a sea of moving targets, and every handshake hides a dagger. Here, ambition is the house special, and paranoia is just the soup of the day. Forget the cutthroat reputation of the market itself. It's the culture inside the glass towers that makes gladiators out of mortals and gossips out of grown adults in $1,000 suits. Every conversation is a negotiation, every meeting a poker game where the stakes are your job, your reputation, and possibly your favourite chair. On paper, everyone is on the same team. In reality, your colleagues are just temporary allies, one typo away from leaking your worst email to the managing director, or, worse, the New York Times. You form alliances with people you barely know, huddling in conference rooms like plotting medieval nobles, whispering about who's up for promotion and who's about to become an object lesson. Betrayal isn't just possible, it's practically encouraged. If you get blindsided, you're not a victim, you're just out of practice. Meetings are battlegrounds. You enter armed with data, charts, and a thin veneer of politeness. You smile and nod as someone constructively criticizes your strategy, knowing full well they're already working to sabotage your next pitch. Every status update is a minefield. Give too much away, and someone will run with your idea before you've even finished your sentence. Hold back, and you're labelled not a team player. It's a delicate dance with sharp elbows and even sharper grins. Then there's the rumour mill, the real heart of any office. Gossip moves faster than insider trading, spreading from the mailroom to the executive suite before you've even finished your coffee. Someone's having an affair, someone's skimming off the top, someone's desk drawer is filled with breath mints and NDA violations. You never know what's true until inevitably it's your turn to be the headline. HR hosts trust-building workshops that everyone treats as a vacation from backstabbing, but nobody leaves with any illusions. The only thing more dangerous than being talked about is being forgotten. The truly ambitious have mastered the art of the subtle sabotage. Maybe they accidentally CC the wrong person on a sensitive email, or conveniently forget to invite you to the casual after-hours meeting where real decisions are made. Sometimes sabotage is disguised as helpfulness. I just wanted to make sure your numbers were right before the presentation, so I sent them to the partner myself. If you're not vigilant, you'll find your career derailed by a spreadsheet error that wasn't there yesterday. And yet, in this world of frenemies and faint praise, a strange camaraderie persists. Rivalries burn hot, but they're oddly personal. Today's nemesis might be tomorrow's drinking buddy, or the only one who'll quietly tip you off before you walk into a boardroom ambush. There's a mutual respect among survivors, a code that says, "I'll stab you in the front, at least you'll see it coming." Trust is rare and fleeting, a precious currency guarded more tightly than any stock tip. You might let your guard down with your tailor, After all, who else can keep a secret like a man who's measured your inseam? But everyone else is a potential opponent. Your best friend could become your worst rival overnight. Just one bonus check or blown trade away. Still, you learn to adapt. You keep a few secrets, cultivate a few allies, and develop a sixth sense for when the wind is about to shift. Office politics on Wall Street is a blood sport, but if you play it right, you might just make it to the next round. And if you don't, well, you can always take your sharpest suit, your best story, and start all over again across the street. Because in the end, the market always rebounds, and so do you, preferably with a better parking spot and a slightly longer knife. Mastering the art of the expense report is key to survival. If you can make a bottle of Dom Perignon sound like a business necessity, you're practically a magician. In the 1980s, Wall Street expense accounts are a playground for creative accounting and gentle criminality. Emphasis on the gentle, unless you're the one signing off on your own sushi boat for 20. The process is a game in itself, a delicate dance between the desperate urge to impress, the competitive need to outspend, and the ever-present fear of a surprise audit. And just like the stock market, the rules shift daily, the risks are real, and everyone's got a story about the time they almost lost it all over a tray of lobster rolls. The first rule of expense accounts is simple. Never let the truth get in the way of a good reimbursement. Did you buy that vintage Bordeaux for client retention? Of course you did. Did you absolutely need that late-night limousine to the Upper East Side? Well, technically, you were networking the whole ride. The line between business and pleasure is more of a dotted suggestion, blurred even further by the after effects of that second bottle of wine. Filling out an expense report is equal parts art and science. You keep a shoebox under your desk, overflowing with receipts ranging from $2.49 deli coffees, written up as strategic breakfast meeting, to triple-digit steakhouse bills, key client engagement. Each slip of paper is another opportunity to flex your creative writing muscles. Descriptions must be vague enough to pass scrutiny, but specific enough to sound legitimate. Team building with strategic partners is gold. Shots with Chad is not. The vocabulary of the expense account is its own secret language. A $2,000 dinner becomes client entertainment. A round of drinks at 2 a.m. is late-stage negotiations. That impulse buy of a dozen roses after the market tanked? Relationship management. If you can master this lingo, you'll have your accounting department signing off on spa treatments, Broadway shows, and the occasional magician hired to improve client morale. But the real pros know the dance doesn't end with creative descriptions. Timing is everything. You wait for end-of-quarter chaos, or when the auditors are distracted by a much larger scandal. You slip your report in on a Friday afternoon, right before everyone heads out for their own questionable weekend research. Or you become friends with Carol in accounting, always bring coffee, and never, ever ask about her cat unless you're prepared to listen for 20 minutes. Still, danger lurks. Compliance officers develop a sixth sense for luxury spending dressed up as corporate necessity. Suddenly, you're summoned for a quick chat. This is where the true test begins. Can you recount with a straight face exactly how a 3-hour lunch with the guys from IT led directly to landing a multi-million-dollar account? Can you explain why the receipt for client transportation is written in crayon and smells like tequila? If you can, you walk out a legend. If you can't, you might end up paying for that lobster twice, once at the restaurant, and again in installments deducted from your next bonus. Of course, not all is deception. Sometimes you really do win a client over an overpriced dinner. Sometimes you actually leave the office for market research, to see for yourself if the martinis at the Four Seasons are as good as the rumours say. The best traders know that part of the job is selling the dream, not just to clients, but to compliance, HR, and yourself. Expense accounts are the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're the intern or the managing director. Everyone has tried to sneak a questionable receipt past the watchful eyes of finance. Some succeed, some fail. But all walk away with a little more knowledge, a lot less shame, and a story that will live forever in the whispered lore of the copy room. At the end of the day, the goal is simple. Keep the clients happy, the numbers green, and your receipts just ambiguous enough to survive another round. In Wall Street's greatest tradition, if you're not pushing the limits, you're not really playing the game. Just don't forget to tip Carol in accounting. She knows where all the bodies and the receipts are buried. The market isn't the only thing that's volatile. Your blood pressure, hairline, and sanity are all subject to wild fluctuations, especially on a Friday afternoon before a big announcement. Here on Wall Street, stress isn't just part of the job, it's the job. Forget spreadsheets, suits, or client dinners. The real currency is cortisol. Is what gets you up in the morning and tucks you in at night with a clenched jaw and a phantom ringing in your ears that may or may not be another missed call from Tokyo. There's an unspoken rule: if you're not stressed, you're not paying attention. If you're calm, you're probably fired, or about to be. You see, the floor runs on a delicate balance of paranoia and performance. You're supposed to smile at the client while your left eye twitches uncontrollably. You're supposed to quote earnings reports while mentally calculating how many tiums it will take to survive lunch. And God help you if you look too relaxed. The second you do, someone will say something like, "Must be nice to be done for the day," which is the corporate equivalent of enjoy unemployment. The unwritten rules are everywhere. You learn them quickly or not at all. For example, never leave your desk early on a Friday, even if your work is done, even if your kidneys are begging for water and your legs have lost all feeling. Because the moment you walk out the door, something will happen. A surprise merger, a massive drop, a rogue press release, and then your boss, who stayed 10 minutes later out of sheer spite, will never let you forget that you weren't there when it mattered. Another rule: don't flinch. Panic is contagious. The moment one trader starts pacing, everyone else checks their screens like it's DEFCON 1. You could trigger a full-floor anxiety spiral just by sighing too loudly. Calmness is faked. Nods are exaggerated. Everyone pretends this is fine. It's not fine. Meetings become psychological minefields. You go in with a smile and a colour-coded binder, and you leave wondering if your days are numbered because someone asked if you were okay lately. That's the phrase. The kiss of death. Are you okay? Is code for you look like you're 2 steps away from doing interpretive dance in the break room and crying into the Keurig. Your coping mechanisms are at best misguided. You chew gum like your life depends on it. You drink enough coffee to qualify as a bean-based organism. You develop little rituals, lucky ties, lucky pens, lucky post-it notes stuck to your monitor that say things like breathe or don't scream. Your therapist, if you had one, would be deeply concerned. Fortunately, you're still following the repress and redirect school of emotional management. Physical signs of stress are worn like badges. Everyone has their thing. Some lose hair. Some grind their teeth so hard they could sharpen pencils with their molars. One guy developed a stress-induced eye twitch that syncs up with market fluctuations. It's unnerving and weirdly impressive. And yet, you all keep going. Because showing stress is expected, but talking about it, not so much. Even your dreams aren't safe. You don't dream of beaches or vacations or winning the lottery. You dream of Bloomberg terminals and being late to imaginary meetings where everyone's a hedge fund manager with your mother's face. You wake up sweating, heart racing, already late for the alarm that hasn't gone off yet. And still, you return every morning. You sit down, crack your knuckles, check your screens, and dive back into the madness. Because the fear index might rise and fall, but it never vanishes. It's your constant companion, the hum beneath the hustle, the whisper in your ear reminding you that you're only as good as your last win. So, you smile, you nod, you clench your jaw, and power through. Because around here, anxiety isn't a warning sign, it's a baseline. And you're doing great. Probably. 1 minute you're up, the next you're looking for a new job, new friends, and possibly a new identity. Nothing brings perspective like watching your entire net worth evaporate before lunch. It starts like any other day: bad coffee, stale bagel, and the faint hope that your carefully hedged positions will behave themselves long enough for you to avoid an ulcer. But the markets have other plans. The first sign is subtle. A nervous buzz on the floor, a few traders pacing just a little too quickly, someone slamming a phone down with more aggression than usual. You check your screen. Numbers flicker. The Dow sneezes, and suddenly the entire economy catches the plague. The plunge begins slowly, then all at once. Stocks don't just dip, they plummet like a greased bowling ball down an elevator shaft. The red on your screen spreads like blood in the water, and everyone can smell it. You try to stay calm, adjusting your tie like that'll help, frantically clicking through tabs as if one of them holds a magic solution. It doesn't. Your portfolio is tanking, your clients are calling, and the Bloomberg terminal starts sounding like a fire alarm. You briefly wonder if you're the only one still pretending to breathe. Phones ring non-stop, but now every call is pure panic. Clients you haven't heard from in months suddenly find time to scream into your ear. Should I sell? Should I buy? Should I hide in a bunker with gold bars and canned beans? You give the same answer to all of them. Stall. Meanwhile, your coworker 2 desks down is already drafting a resume and muttering about real estate in Montana. You, on the other hand, are trying to remember if you can pass off stress vomiting as a dietary cleanse. Managers huddle in glass offices like generals during wartime, faces pale, ties loosened, eyes darting from ticker to ticker like they're watching the last 5 minutes of a horror movie. You hear words like unprecedented, bloodbath and liquidity crisis float through the air like cursed incantations. No one's joking anymore. Even Chad, who once tried to expense a velvet tracksuit as client attire, is staring solemnly into the abyss. You get up to use the bathroom, not because you need to, but because you're convinced if you stare at your screen for 1 more second, your heart will file for bankruptcy. In the mirror, you barely recognize yourself. Pale, sweaty, hair doing things it legally shouldn't. You splash water on your face and whisper affirmations to yourself like a man auditioning for a motivational poster that's about to catch fire. Back at your desk, the damage is biblical. You're down 6 figures before noon. Your biggest client just threatened to take their business to someone with a functioning risk management strategy. Your boss wants a meeting soon. And you're trying to figure out if it's too early to fake a fainting spell, or if you should just lie down on the floor and accept your fate as financial roadkill. But this is Wall Street. You don't cry. You adapt. You start clawing through spreadsheets, looking for silver linings, arbitrage, or just the one ETF that hasn't burst into metaphorical flames. You place a few desperate trades that feel like rolling dice on the Titanic. You try not to scream. You definitely don't scream. That would be unprofessional. You simply vocalize a long, shaky exhale that sounds remarkably like a dying fax machine, and then it stops. Markets close, the numbers freeze. You stare at the final screen, your personal value chart now resembling the outline of a ski slope, and all you can think about is the quiet. No ringing phones, no emails, just silence, and the faint realization that, for better or worse, you survived the day. Well, your job might not. Your bonus certainly didn't. But your heart's still beating and your Rolodex is intact. So tomorrow you'll come in, paste a confident smile on your cracked face, and pretend that it never happened. Because on Wall Street there's always another rally. You just have to live long enough to see it. Every floor has its myths. The guy who made $10 million before breakfast, or the one who lost everything because he sneezed at the wrong time. Most legends end up as warnings. On Wall Street, stories move faster than trades. If you make a mistake, the market might forgive you. The office gossip chain? Never. Every floor in every firm has its cast of recurring characters, some celebrated, some reviled, all immortalized in the oral tradition of whispered lunchroom retellings and hushed bar banter. These are the legends, the titans, the crash and burners, and the folks who once allegedly threw a chair through a Bloomberg terminal after missing their quarterly bonus by $6.34. Let's start with Helicopter Pete, a mythical figure who supposedly closed a deal so massive he chartered a helicopter to deliver the signed contracts to HQ, only to realize he'd left the paperwork on the roof when he landed. He still got the bonus. Now he works in private equity. That's how myths work here. No matter how much someone messes up, if they walked away richer than they started, they're a hero. At least until the next guy comes along. Then there's Margin Call Mandy, the woman who once bet against a major merger and somehow, no one knows how, turned a catastrophic error into a promotion. The theory is that she knew exactly what she was doing and shorted her own mistake. That kind of chaos wizardry gets you a framed photo in the break room and a cocktail named after you at the office Christmas party. It also gets you a reputation as someone both brilliant and terrifying. Mandy hasn't blinked since 1983. Of course, not all legends wear Armani. Some are cautionary tales told with the same reverence one might reserve for urban legends about haunted elevators. There was Two Laptop Larry, who ran trades on 2 separate accounts at once, his firm's and his own. The scam lasted 3 glorious weeks before he accidentally emailed compliance instead of his cousin. He now teaches financial ethics. No one knows whether to laugh or cry. And who could forget Eraser Frank, who, according to legend, lost an entire morning's work when he sneezed mid-trade and accidentally hit the wrong key? The rumour goes he wiped $4 million off the board with a single keystroke, and tried to fix it using a literal pencil eraser on the screen. He hasn't been seen since, but his story is passed down to every new intern as a cautionary bedtime tale. Always double check, never sneeze during a trade, and never ever let them know you panicked. The thing is, these stories aren't just for laughs. They're morality plays in a $2,000 suit. They're the unwritten code of the trading floor, wrapped in hyperbole and delivered with just enough truth to make you sweat. Every trader wants to be a legend, the good kind. The kind whose name is dropped in boardroom meetings and office parties with an air of admiration and just a touch of fear. The kind who walks into a room and makes junior analysts sit up straighter. But here's the secret. Most of the people who become legends don't mean to. They're just trying to survive the day, just like you. One mistake, one lucky hunch, one elevator conversation at the right moment, and suddenly your name is inked into the folklore of finance. Whether you're celebrated or scorned is often just a matter of timing. So you listen, you remember. You take notes, mentally of course, because writing things down is how scandals start. You file away the lessons, don't boast too loudly, don't bet the farm, and never trust anyone who says this trade can't fail. You learn from the heroes, the villains, and especially from the guys who vanished mysteriously after an unfortunate mix-up involving a Cayman Islands account. Because on Wall Street legends are made every day, but only the smart ones survive long enough to hear their story told by someone else, over a steak, under low lighting, with a knowing smirk and a fresh cocktail in hand. Exercise is what happens when you sprint for the last train home. Nutrition is whatever doesn't get stuck in your teeth. Regular checkups? That's what the paramedics are for. In 1980s Wall Street, the concept of wellness is a punchline at best and a security risk at worst. Your body is not a temple, it's a leased Ferrari, driven recklessly, rarely serviced, and always 5 seconds away from catching fire. Sure, you've heard of balanced meals, hydration, and 8 hours of sleep. You just assumed those were luxuries for people who worked in accounting. Let's start with food. Your diet consists of whatever's available between screaming matches and margin calls. Breakfast. If you remembered it, it's a cigarette, black coffee, and maybe a breath mint if you're really treating yourself. Lunch is a blur, often taken standing up while yelling into a phone. Maybe you grabbed a pastrami sandwich. Maybe you grabbed someone else's pastrami sandwich. Doesn't matter. It's been swallowed whole while your heart rate spiked to 140 over a dip in the S&P. Dinner is a toss-up. If you're lucky, it's steak and bourbon during a networking dinner that's 40% business, 60% silent competition over who can expense the most. If you're unlucky, it's half a warm burrito eaten at your desk while filling out paperwork for a client who just realized they're broke. The closest thing to vitamins you get are from the lime in your gin and tonic and the chewable antacid you keep mistaking for a mint. Exercise is mythical. Some folks claim they jog in the mornings, but those people are viewed with suspicion, like they're planning to defect to consulting. Real cardio is a sprint to catch a closing elevator, a frantic lunge for a dropped pager, or the sheer physical strain of holding your body upright after 40 consecutive hours of stress and Red Bulls. You do, however, possess impressive finger strength from decades of stabbing calculator keys and slamming phones. Your back hurts. Your knees crack like bubble wrap. Your eyes haven't seen natural daylight since Reagan's first term. But you don't complain, because in this world, showing weakness is a surefire way to get replaced by someone younger, faster, and more willing to live entirely off vending machine Snickers and denial. You know something's wrong when your heartbeat sounds like Morse code, but you push through. Why? Because the market never sleeps, and apparently neither do you. Sleep, in fact, is optional. At best, you get 4 hours in a tangle of rumpled sheets, tie still half-knotted, dreaming about decimal points and sudden layoffs. Most nights, you fall asleep with the TV on and a legal pad full of numbers pressed into your cheek. Alarm goes off, and you leap out of bed with the energy of someone being chased by regret and tax fraud. Regular medical care, that's for people with time. If something hurts, you ignore it. If it really hurts, you take something from your desk drawer pharmacy, see earlier segment, and ignore it harder. Most people don't see a doctor unless they collapse at their desk, at which point someone will shout he's fine and offer you orange juice like it's a miracle cure. The firm might send a get well card, or a replacement, whichever is faster. Mental health, that's adorable. The idea that stress might be bad for you is met with the same skepticism as astrology or artisanal kale. You're stressed? Good. That means you care. That means you're still in the game. Everyone's operating at a slow simmer of existential dread and caffeine withdrawal, and that's considered productive. So no, health is not a priority. It's not even on the radar. But here's the thing, they don't teach you how to survive this life. You just do, somehow. Fueled by ambition, powdered courage, and a vague idea that burnout is just part of the process. You'll worry about your cholesterol when you're rich enough to afford a heart attack in the Hamptons. Until then, there's coffee, adrenaline, and a protein bar someone left in the vending machine 3 years ago that's technically still edible. Probably. The only thing scarier than a margin call is a surprise visit from the SEC. Half the thrill is seeing what you can get away with before someone in a grey suit starts asking questions. There's a certain electricity in the air when someone mutters compliance is coming. Conversations drop to whispers, papers vanish, phone calls are suddenly purely social. In 1980s Wall Street, the average trader fears 3 things: losing a client, missing a trade, and receiving a politely worded letter from a government agency that could end your career. The Securities and Exchange Commission isn't just a regulator, it's the Grim Reaper in a Brooks Brothers blazer. Of course, most of the time, you're not doing anything technically illegal. Technically, you're just bending the rules, massaging them, giving them a friendly little shove in the direction of profitability. And honestly, it's not like the rules were designed with your level of creativity in mind. If you found a way to exploit a loophole the size of a conference room, isn't that just strategic innovation? You learn early on that compliance is more performance art than policy. There are entire departments whose job is to frown disapprovingly while you invent new acronyms for your shell companies. They issue memos like confetti, avoid insider trading, don't bribe foreign officials, maybe don't expense that yacht. You read them all, sign at the bottom, and immediately go back to whatever semi-legal magic you were working on before lunch. Everyone has a system. Some keep a burner pager just in case. Some use code words over the phone, turning financial crimes into bizarre culinary metaphors. Did you season the asparagus? Might actually mean, did you front-run the trade before compliance logs it? It's like a spy thriller, but instead of national secrets, you're hiding aggressive accounting practices and ethically ambiguous lunch meetings. There's also a strange badge of honour among those who've had a brush with the regulators and lived to tell the tale. Oh, I got audited once in '84, someone will say, sipping a scotch that cost more than your car. Taught me to never email anything I wouldn't tattoo on my forehead. They laugh, you laugh. But you also go home and delete half your inbox just in case. Then there are the legends, the ones who push too far. The trader who tried to short the same security from 6 fake companies he registered using his dog's name. The guy who ran a side hustle laundering money through vintage car auctions. The assistant who accidentally CC'd the SEC on a memo labelled Do Not CC SEC. These stories circulate like campfire ghost tales, each ending with the same quiet punchline. He doesn't work in finance anymore, but it's not all shadowy drama. Sometimes the line between grey area and felony is blurrier than your eyesight after a 4-martini lunch. You genuinely don't know if what you're doing is legal. You ask compliance. They say maybe. You do it anyway. That's the Wall Street way. Apologise later, ideally from your second home in Boca Raton. And yet the spectre of regulation looms. You can ignore it, laugh at it, mock it over drinks, but you never forget it. Because one day, someone in a well-pressed suit is going to walk onto the floor with a clipboard and a tone of voice that suggests you'd better find your receipts. Fast. The vibe changes instantly. Even the office plants seem nervous. Still, you keep pushing. Because the system is built on risk, and that includes the risk of getting caught. Every rule broken is a chance for profit. Every loophole exploited is a line item in someone's bonus. And if you're smart, charming, and just slippery enough, you might just pull it off. Just make sure your lawyer is on speed dial. And whatever you do, never use the words off the books in front of Carol from compliance. She smiles, but deep down she's the one who'll bury you. Quietly, efficiently, and with full documentation. For every wolf of Wall Street, there's a sheep in recovery. Some people get out alive, most just get new business cards. Eventually the ride ends. Maybe not in a crash, but with a slow, grinding realization that your body, your brain, or your moral compass has finally filed for divorce. The late nights, the stimulants, the constant cortisol-fueled grind, they all add up. One day you're the king of the trading floor, the next you're staring into a cup of herbal tea at a wellness retreat in Connecticut, wondering how you mistook adrenaline for purpose for 10 straight years. Rehab? in the 1980s Wall Street world is equal parts exile and rite of passage. You don't talk about it while you're in it. You barely admit it when you get out. You just disappear for a few weeks as stress leave, you say, and return slightly thinner, slightly paler, and aggressively wearing linen. Everyone pretends not to notice, but they do. And someone will definitely steal your chair while you're gone. The truth is, trying to quit this life is like trying to quit oxygen. The chaos has a rhythm, a logic, even a twisted kind of warmth. It's familiar. It's addictive. You miss the energy, the screaming, the phones, the competition. You miss the version of yourself who could survive on 4 hours of sleep and 2 espresso shots and still charm the socks off a Swiss banker by lunch. That person might have been a wreck, but at least they felt alive. Recovery looks different for everyone. For some, it's yoga at sunrise and a diet of steamed vegetables. For others, it's quietly switching to decaf and deleting the dealer's number. There are the brave ones who cut ties completely, leave the city, sell the suits, buy a house upstate with a dog and a porch swing. They start writing novels or open up a hardware store. They claim to be happy. You want to believe them. But for most, quitting is less of a clean break and more of a slow fade. You swear off the powder but keep the martinis. You skip the clubs but still read the financial pages like scripture. You tell yourself you've changed, and maybe you have, but then the market surges, the adrenaline kicks in, and suddenly you're whispering to a bartender about just one drink to celebrate. Next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. You're in a cab with someone named Skylar, who says they're in venture capital, and your liver is writing a resignation letter. Some folks find a new religion, therapy. Therapy becomes the new lunch meeting. It's quieter, gentler, full of insights and emotional breakthroughs that would have gotten you laughed off the floor 5 years ago. You cry for the first time in a decade and realize you've never actually taken a breath without checking a ticker tape. It's jarring, it's progress, sometimes both. And still, you wonder if you'll ever truly quit. The suit may be packed away, the Rolex pawned, the Rolodex thrown into a moving box labelled past life. But deep down, a part of you is still calculating futures, still listening for the ring of a phone, still missing the sound of the opening bell like a war veteran misses the battlefield. Redemption comes slowly, if it comes at all. It's not glamorous. No one throws a parade for walking away. There's no confetti for not doing cocaine at your desk. But you start to measure your days in calmer ways. Mornings that don't begin with panic. Meals that involve actual chewing. Nights where you fall asleep without plotting your next move. You still miss the rush, the game, the thrill of walking into a room and knowing you're the smartest, fastest, most unhinged person in it. But you also remember how it ended, how it always ends, with a hospital visit, a resignation letter, or a quiet, lonely cab ride to nowhere. So you try again, one day at a time, one meal, one walk, one awkwardly sincere conversation at a time. And maybe, just maybe, you learn that being a little boring is better than being a legend with a nosebleed and a permanently clenched jaw, because at the end of the day, the most rebellious thing a Wall Street warrior can do isn't blowing up the system. It's choosing to step away, to live, to breathe, to stop. As the sun comes up over Manhattan, you drag yourself home, richer, poorer, older, or just more confused. Tomorrow it starts again, and somehow you can't wait. The city's quiet now. Not silent. Manhattan never sleeps. It just dozes with one eye open, but quieter. The taxis still hum. Somewhere a street vendor is brewing the first pot of coffee for people who didn't just pull an all-nighter at a nightclub called something like Liability. But you're done. Not in the existential sense, though it's tempting, but in the way that says your voice is hoarse, your shoes hurt, and your last functioning brain cell clocked out an hour ago. This is the moment every Wall Street warrior both dreads and secretly craves. The comedown. The stillness after the chaos. The high has passed, financial, chemical, or otherwise, and all that's left is you. A cab ride, and the vague scent of expensive regret clinging to your collar. You press your forehead to the window, watch the skyline blur past and think, did I win? Did I lose? Does it even matter? Your apartment greets you like an estranged friend. The lights are still on from yesterday morning. A single pizza box lies like a fallen soldier on the couch. The answering machine blinks, a lonely red eye pulsing with unanswered messages from your mother, your ex, and possibly your dentist. You drop your keys in a bowl you keep forgetting to clean, remove your jacket like it weighs 40 pounds, and collapse onto a mattress that hasn't been properly made since before the last market correction. You lie there, tie loosened, shoes still on, heart still racing. You try to fall asleep, but your mind is still in motion, flipping through the day like ticker tape. That one trade, that look from your boss, that moment you almost lost everything, or maybe gained it all. It's hard to tell anymore. Your body wants rest. Your brain wants answers. Neither gets what it wants. As dawn creeps in through the blinds, you think about how strange it is. This life you've chosen. The long hours, the short victories, the people who call you a genius one day and a liability the next. You remember the new kid on the floor, the one who still thinks a 10-minute break is a real thing. You envy him, briefly. Then you remember he's working on commission and hasn't eaten anything but vending machine trail mix since Tuesday. And yet, despite the stress, the ulcers, the absolute lack of any cardiovascular routine, you love it. Not in the romantic sense. This isn't a movie. No one's playing saxophone under your window, but in that strange, battered, addicted to the grind way, you love the game, the chase, the thrill of risking everything for a number on a screen. It's absurd, it's unhealthy, it's yours. You tell yourself you'll slow down soon, maybe take a weekend off, visit somewhere green, somewhere without fluorescent lighting and men shouting about derivatives. Maybe next quarter, maybe. Until then, you close your eyes and savor the last few moments of quiet before it all starts again. Before the alarm, the subway, the coffee, the chaos. Before you strap the armor back on, button up the suit, and return to the battlefield where success is temporary and survival is a badge of honor. And as sleep finally begins to take you, soft, stubborn, and overdue, you smile. Because you know deep down that no matter how broken you feel tonight, you'll wake up and do it all over again. Not because you have to, because you can't imagine doing anything else. It's 7:45 a.m., and you're herded into a conference room that smells like coffee breath and anxiety. The manager struts in, sleeves rolled up, ready to unleash a motivational monologue that sounds suspiciously like a threat. You nod, you clap, you vow to crush it, all while praying you aren't today's example of what not to do. Nothing says team spirit quite like applause for the guy who just got fired in real time. Welcome to the daily ritual of corporate gladiatorship, the morning meeting. The stage is a windowless room with stained carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, and the emotional vibe of a hostage negotiation. You sit in chairs designed to hurt your back just enough to keep you alert. Your co-workers are beside you, bleary-eyed and still nursing whatever hangover, heartbreak or existential crisis the night before gifted them. Everyone pretends to be chipper. No one is fooled. The meeting begins the same way every time. Someone coughing violently into a coffee cup, followed by a PowerPoint slide that says something like "Let's win today" in Comic Sans. Then comes the manager, usually a former trader with 3 divorces and the energy of a high school gym coach who peaked in 1982. He claps once, loudly, startling at least 2 people fully awake. "All right, team," he barks, pacing like a motivational speaker whose TED Talk was cancelled for yelling too much. "It's a new day. Time to dominate. Time to crush it. You clap because you're supposed to. Not clapping is dangerous. Not clapping means you're not a team player. And on Wall Street, not a team player is HR speak for will be escorted out by security by next Tuesday." Then comes the motivational speech. It's a Frankenstein's monster of cliches, threats, and war metaphors. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take is quickly followed by, "If you're not closing, you're dying." There's a graph nobody understands, but everyone pretends to, and an anecdote about someone who made $1 million sale by sheer force of will, or possibly by lying creatively on a conference call. Sometimes he pulls out the chart. This is the leaderboard of shame and glory. The top 5 names are in gold. The bottom 5 are in red. If your name is in red, you avoid eye contact and start mentally polishing your resume. If your name is at the top, you grin smugly while secretly wondering how long until your luck runs out. Either way, the room applauds while the manager points to the names like he's announcing the winners of a televised execution. Then there's the moment. Every meeting has it. The part where someone is singled out. Maybe it's praise. More often, it's a casual mention of a missed quota or a poorly handled call. The manager's tone stays upbeat, but everyone hears the subtext loud and clear. Don't screw up like Jerry did, or Jerry becomes a cautionary tale. You turn to glance at Jerry. Jerry is staring at his shoes. Jerry knows. And just when you think it's over, just when the manager says, "Let's get out there and make it happen," he pauses. He looks around the room, and he says something like, "Remember, there are plenty of people out there who want your job. Don't give them a reason to get it." That's your cue to clap again. You file out of the room in silence, the fake smiles fading, replaced by the laser-focused grimness of people about to spend 12 hours trying not to get fired. You grab another coffee, check your emails, and try to forget that your job security hinges on how well you schmooze a guy named Doug, who's still deciding whether to move his portfolio to someone younger and shinier. But here's the thing, they work. These meetings, as twisted as they are. Somehow, by 8:15 a.m., you're back at your desk, caffeinated, rattled, and ready to fight your way through another jungle of market volatility and backroom deals. You've internalized the slogans, you've recited the goals, and despite knowing that the entire production is built on fear and adrenaline, you're already strategizing how to move up that leaderboard, because no one wants to be Jerry, and everyone wants to be remembered, at least until next quarter. Your desk isn't just a workspace, it's a battlefield of subtle bragging rights. Maybe you've got a novelty mug that screams "I'm fun," "please don't fire me," or a lucite deal trophy that doubles as a paperweight and a warning to rivals. Photos of your yacht, that you definitely rented for a weekend, sit next to a rubber stress ball you've nearly bitten in half. Every item is a statement, the more ridiculous the better. Welcome to the unspoken art of desk curation, Wall Street edition. In a world where appearances are everything and subtlety is a blood sport, your workstation says more about you than your resume. Your desk doesn't just hold your monitors, it holds your ambitions, your insecurities, and at least 3 barely concealed attempts to outshine the guy, 2 seats over, who's still coasting on the glory of closing a mid-cap acquisition in '86. First, let's talk about the trophies, literal and figurative. Every desk worth its ergonomic chair has a few lucite tombstones, those see-through plastic bricks engraved with deal names and dates, designed to remind everyone within a 15-foot radius that you once did something impressive. Bonus points if you stack them into a tiny, precarious skyline, as if to say, "Yes, I've built empires. Now watch me knock them over while reaching for a pen." Then there's the mug hierarchy. Junior analysts have boring mugs, usually a gift from HR or something with a motivational quote that feels like a cry for help. The senior guys? They've got novelty mugs with borderline inappropriate jokes like, "I survived another fiscal quarter," or "World's okayest banker." These aren't just for holding caffeine, they're weapons of sarcasm, designed to simultaneously charm and intimidate. Desk photos are their own category of psychological warfare. Family photos are standard, but only if tastefully framed and not too emotional. A casual black and white beach shot of your spouse, who may or may not be a model in a stock photo frame you never swapped out, says, "I have a life, but not so much of one that it interferes with my dedication to the firm." A picture of your dog in a tie? That's gold. It humanizes you just enough to survive a round of layoffs. And then there's the tech. 2 monitors? Standard. 3 monitors? You're getting serious. 4 or more? Either you're high level or deeply insecure. Bonus points if one of them is vertical, for no reason other than to look complicated. And if you've got a mechanical keyboard that clicks like a Geiger counter, everyone knows you mean business, or at least that you enjoy making everyone within earshot deeply uncomfortable. Personal flair? Carefully curated. Maybe a stress ball shaped like a bull. Maybe a limited edition figurine of Gordon Gekko. Maybe a bonsai tree that's been dead since last earnings season but no one has the heart to throw out. Whatever it is, it's not just decor, it's narrative. It says, "I'm in control, I'm stylish." And yes, that's a lava lamp, and no, you may not touch it. But the real masterstroke of desk politics is knowing what not to display. You don't want too many personal items, that reads as distracted. Too sterile, and you seem robotic. The goal is balance. A lived-in chaos that whispers I'm too busy closing deals to tidy up, but not so disorganized that I forget your birthday. Of course, underneath the facade, every desk tells the same story. Stress, ambition, and a quiet, desperate hope that this is the year the bonus hits 6 figures, before taxes, of course. That stack of sticky notes, half reminders, half therapy. That drawer full of protein bars and headache pills, a survival kit, and that one drawer you never open. That's where you keep your sanity, locked away with the user manual for the Bloomberg terminal and the last shred of your work-life balance. So next time you pass by someone's desk, look closer. The bobblehead might be nodding yes, but the 5th coffee cup says no sleep in 3 days. That decorative bowl of mints? bribery, that pristine framed quote on the wall that says "Fortune favours the bold," probably covering a hole they punched in the drywall during Q3. Because in the jungle of finance, your desk isn't just where you work, it's where you wage psychological war with spreadsheets, rivals, and your own sense of self-worth. Decorate accordingly. It's the 1980s, so technology is mostly there to disappoint you. Enter the fax machine, a temperamental beast that eats documents, jams for fun, and only works when you're not looking. Sending a contract becomes a full-contact sport involving slapping the side of the machine and yelling, "Come on, baby, just this once." When it finally sputters out a crumpled, barely legible page, you celebrate like you just landed on the moon. The fax machine isn't a tool, it's a test, a rite of passage. A cruel prank passed down from the previous generation of traders who swore by it and swore at it, often in the same breath. This hunk of off-white plastic, about the size of a microwave and twice as loud, sits in the corner like some ancient deity demanding sacrifices in the form of toner, patience, and your last nerve. You never really use a fax machine, you engage in a battle of wills. Step 1. Feed the paper. Sounds easy, but the machine operates on a strict policy of paper racism. It hates glossy stock. It hates wrinkled sheets. It hates anything with a staple, a smudge, or the slightest hint of hope. Insert your perfectly aligned, triple-checked document and watch as it immediately crumples it into origami and spits it back out like a disappointed god. Step 2. Dial the number. This is where the real stress begins, because no matter how carefully you type in those sacred 10 digits, the odds of a busy signal are roughly the same as rolling snake eyes every single time. And if you're off by even one number, congratulations, you've just sent your confidential client agreement to a dentist's office in Boise. Again. Now let's talk about the sound. The fax machine screeches like a banshee trapped in a blender. You hear that static burst, that high-pitched whine, and that one final click that might signal success or complete failure. You'll never know until you check the confirmation sheet, which only prints half the time and is always in courier font so faint it looks like a ghost wrote it. Still, it's your only option. Email is a fantasy. Couriers take hours, and your boss wants that signed contract now. So you stand there, tie askew, sweat forming under your collar, pleading with a machine that has absolutely no empathy and less than 30% success rate. You try the classic move, gently tapping the side like it's a vending machine that owes you a soda. No dice. You escalate to slapping, then banging, then muttered threats. The machine remains unmoved. When it finally works, and it does work eventually out of pure spite, you feel an overwhelming rush of joy. You shout, you fist pump, you declare victory like Rocky at the top of the steps. You hold up the transmission receipt like it's the Magna Carta. Everyone within earshot nods in solemn recognition. You've survived. For now. Of course, just because your fax went through doesn't mean the other side received it legibly. Half the time, the output looks like a smudged Rorschach test run through a meat grinder. You get a call 10 minutes later. We received something, it might be a contract or possibly a menu from a Greek diner. And back you go. Round 2. There's also the problem of shared fax machines. You're not the only one in line. Half the floor is backed up, standing around like nervous passengers at a broken airport gate. You make small talk with someone from M&A about the Yankees while quietly praying their fax doesn't jam, and set off a 20-minute tech support summoning ritual. And let's not forget the real horror. Sending something and then realizing you forgot the cover page, or sent the wrong version, or left in the passive-aggressive comment you were supposed to delete before finalizing. Cue the emergency recall attempts, the panicked sprint down the hall to physically intercept the recipient, and the quiet hope that no one checks the machine's memory log. In the end, the fax machine isn't just a frustrating piece of technology, it's a metaphor for the era, for the industry, for the constant battle between urgency and incompetence, between intention and execution. It's a reminder that, in a world powered by cocaine and ambition, even your tools might betray you. But when it works, it feels like magic. Ugly, screeching, smudged magic. And that's enough to keep you coming back. Just one more time. Come on, baby. Just this once. So, as the fluorescent lights flicker off above 1,000 abandoned desks and the echo of the closing bell finally fades, let's take a breath. Tonight, you've survived a day in the most caffeinated, stress-soaked and jaw-clenchingly ridiculous world the 1980s could invent. Wall Street in the age of cocaine. you navigated stampedes of ambition, rode out market freefalls, and learned that sometimes your only real asset is a decent pair of shoes and the ability to bluff with absolute confidence. But beneath the gold watches and empty pizza boxes, what shines through is a strange sort of resilience. A stubborn hope that tomorrow's chaos can be conquered, or at least outpaced. The traders of this era didn't have it easy. They wrestled with impossible pressure, sleepless nights, and an entire pharmacy's worth of questionable coping mechanisms. They burned out fast, but they burned bright, fueled by adrenaline, fear, and the vague promise that one big score could change everything. So as you tuck yourself in, surrounded by clean sheets, the gentle hum of a fan, and the profound luxury of not being yelled at by a man in suspenders, maybe spare a moment for those who came before. The ones who tried to build empires between takeout deliveries and late-night disasters. The ones who proved that survival sometimes means just making it to the next morning, no matter what it costs. Because history, as always, is proof that people are endlessly creative, deeply flawed, and in the end, completely ridiculous. So rest easy. The market will open again tomorrow. But tonight you're rich in something the 1980s never could buy. A quiet mind, a warm bed, and the knowledge that the only thing you're trading is one day for the next. Good night.